To talk more about the November 30 anti-corruption rally, we have Tindig Pilipinas co-convenor Kiko Aquino-Dee joining us here on Morning Matters. Welcome back to the program.
Hi, good morning, Gretchen. Good morning to everyone watching today.
Okay, first of all, I just want to get your response to Senator Bam Aquino's call for Filipinos to put aside political colors this coming Sunday. Does that mean we're going to see pro-Duterte, anti-Duterte supporters in one venue?
But I think it's the same position as September 21, no? So we're not pro anyone and we're kind of anti everyone, no? So if that's what you're expecting when we say set aside political colors, then yes, no. Definitely, I think the common call of the rally doesn't. While you're happy to call out whichever politician we want, no, the common call of the rally is ilantad, meaning transparency, ibalik, meaning forfeiture, ikulong, which is what everyone has been saying the whole time, igalang ang 1987 Constitution, and ipanalo ang sambayanan kontra dinastiya. So we're putting, as we've seen in the last few weeks, no, political dynasties have been such a big contributing factor to the corruption that we're seeing. And so we're putting that right alongside our calls against corruption for this November 30.
Okay, but for the November 30 protest, there has been some confusion over which group is rallying where. So the People Power Monument rally, yan ba ay Tindig Pilipinas rally? Can you enlighten us over what's going to happen?
Right. So yung Tindig, isa lang siya sa mga organizing groups para sa EDSA People Power Monument sa November 30. Again, yung broadest alliance namin, it's called the Trillion Peso March movement. And kasama dito yung CBCP at ibang mga religious groups. Kasama dito yung iba't ibang mga civil society organizations. Tindig is just one of the different organizers po. So this is the part 2 of the rally that we had in People Power Monument last September 21.
Oh, but the program, is it organized by Tindig Pilipinas?
We had significant contributions naman po, but again, we're part of a coalition, so it's not, so I don't want to claim na Tindig yung gumawa ng buo, no? But just on the topic of the program, no, we're expecting to have a full day of events on November 30. So from 8:45 to 9:30, the program will be led by our partners from different labor unions in the labor sector, because it's really a red letter day for the labor sector, November 30 Bonifacio Day. 9:40 to 11 o'clock will be an interfaith program, and part of that program will be the Sunday Mass that will be held there at People Power Monument. 11 o'clock to 2 o'clock will be the main program, where the different civil society groups, religious organizations will be making our main calls. And then 2 to 6 o'clock will be the youth-led program, where aside from the youth also giving voice on the issue of corruption, we've also invited a lot of the artists who volunteered to perform for us, to perform during that. Most but not all will perform during that segment.
So si Ben and Ben at saka si Catriona Gray will be at 2 to 6 p.m.
Baka pinang up namin ng konti. It's we're moving stuff around, but definitely hindi lang purely speeches yung 11 to 2. Pero that's where we're front loading a lot of the more serious stuff for that.
Just to another thing to clarify, no, is Akbayan part of Tindig Pilipinas?
That's right po. So Tindig, and again, Tindig is just one of the many organizers of the Trillion Peso March, but Tindig is composed of different political parties. Nandiyan yung Akbayan, Liberal Party, Mamameng Liberal, Magdalo Party, but also we're working with a bunch of civil society organizations, yung Alyansa ng mga Samahang Pantao, that's a group organizing a lot of urban poor and other sectors. There is Every Woman for the women's sector, etc., etc. So it's a broad coalition.
And how different is this Trillion Peso March at the People Power Monument from the Kilusang Bayang Kontra Kurakot at the Luneta, which will happen on the same day?
Well, I think the similarities are more important than the differences. No? Both of these groups are consistent as far as standing up against corruption and also not propping up any politicos who've been involved in corruption issues. So I think we have a lot of respect for each other. there might just be some differences in terms of the specific calls made on the day itself. So on our end, for instance, while we respect the call for resignations, I think that's within the Constitution. That's not a position that our group has arrived at this point. No? So it's just a different level of consensus between the two groups, perhaps.
Oh, yun nga, yung kayo ay you're not calling for resignation. But what if, let's say, a supporter, a pro-Duterte supporter comes in to your rally at the People Power Monument and holds up a placard saying, Marcos resign. How would you deal with that?
I think as much as possible, we want to respect freedom of speech. No? So if individuals call for Marcos resign and they're not unruly, they're not disrupting the program, well, that's a relatively minor issue. I think what we're more sensitive about are things that are explicitly beyond the bounds of the 87 Constitution. So kung halimbawa may panawagan sila sa armed forces to withdraw support, I think that's definitely beyond the bounds. And we have marshals, just like we did noong September 21, may mga marshals naman na pumapaligid from the organizers with IDs, and they will ask people to put down such calls. And if that's not, if it can't be resolved at that level, medyo close coordination pa rin po tayo sa ating PNP, who will be securing the perimeter, but are also on hand to assist if our marshals need that assistance.
Bukod dun sa withdrawal of support as something that could be taken as seditious, ano pa yung iba pang mga bawal? I mean, parang na pinaka-iingatan ninyo?
Again, Gretchen, parang rally naman siya. As much as possible, it should be a space for freedom of speech, and we don't want to police too many things. No? So, ang very clear red line are things outside the bounds of the 87 Constitution, which to me, ito yung mga calls that call out the military. And then if there are things that are not aligned with the calls of the protest, so for example, yung mga resign all, again, hanggang maaari, if you're just gonna put up a placard or two and then, or resign Marcos, resign Duterte, something like that, if you're gonna put up a placard or whatever, you're welcome. If you have signs calling out particular politicians, you're welcome to put up those signs. But if it gets to the point na marami kayo at sadya yung dinidisrupt yung program, that is, I think, where we'll step in. So it's more, we want to make sure the program runs smoothly. We want to make sure that everyone is safe, and we want to make sure that we're clear about our support for the 87 Constitution. I think that's the framework that we're working with.
Because there was some confusion back in November 16 and 17 when UPI had their rally naman dito sa EDSA. Yung QC parang pinatigil sila ng mas maaga kasi sinabi na meron na daw seditious remarks, no, which was we didn't get clarity over what those remarks were, but merong mga hindi pinapasok kasi yun nga yung panawagan nila, in the same way that the INC rally also stop the pro-Duterte supporters from joining them. So in a way, parang ayaw, I mean, nabanggit to ni Rafaela kahapon, you're very careful about the rally being hijacked. What are you seeing about that possibility?
So definitely, we're in constant communication with the PNP. We're having several meetings with our marshals. Kahapon lang, actually, we were able to, I think, if I'm not mistaken, we were able to secure sort of more people to volunteer to come to marshal. We're talking with a lot of groups, yung mga dating bikers for Lenny, riders for Lenny. We're grateful na we're in touch with them and they're helping us out with marshalling. Pero yun po, I think, again, it's really a question of balance. No? I think galit talaga yung mga tao, and if the means of expression is calling out particular politicians, tingin ko pasok naman talaga yan sa freedom of speech. No? But again, as you mentioned, no, there's a certain group na parang they tried to go sa INC, and then I think correctly parang hinindian sila. They tried to, even noong September 21, they tried to sort of latch on to yung EDSA protest, and I think the Luneta protest as well, and rightly hinindihan naman sila. Medyo sanay na rin po tayo sa modus nila, and we're a bit more we're more on top of sort of keeping an eye on the perimeter to make sure na if they're there, it will be very clear to our participants that that's not part of our program, and then as much as possible not to engage na.
Okay, so I spoke with Bayan Chairperson Teddy Casino on the show, and sabi niya nun na, I mean, very clear naman din yung proposal ng Transition Council, and this is seen as their sort of alternative to the current broken system that has allowed corruption to pervade from many different sides. No. How about the Trillion Peso March movement? I know you're calling out political dynasties, calling out corruption, but in realistic, concrete terms, how do you imagine that change to happen? And are you happy with the way investigations have been going?
I think investigations there's some positive steps, but largely medyo mabagal pa rin. Kasi yung nakita pa lang nating nakukulong ay, if I'm not mistaken, mga district engineers and contractors pa lang, yung mga political officials na involved dito. Si Zaldico pa lang ating na-issuehan ng arrest warrant. Supposedly more are coming, and we're anticipating that. But we also look with some concern dito sa parang wavering position ng administration towards Speaker Martin Romualdez na 2 weeks ago, the line of the president was no evidence. Last week, it was, okay, baka kakasuhan na siya. And then this last week, if I'm not mistaken, I've heard some statements backtracking on that. So I think there's some positive steps, but largely I wouldn't say we're satisfied with the way the investigations are going. But in terms of what's realistic, definitely the legal end is important. But I'd also like to say that accountability is also political. And that means using the ballot to turn our backs on these politicians na paulit-ulit yung pangalan nila. And we've seen that happen before. No? When the PDAF scam happened, si Bong Revilla, Jingoy Estrada, and the late Juan Ponce Enrile, 2 out of 3 failed their re-election in 2019. The last one, Bong Revilla, was only propped up by the Duterte administration in their slate. No? So I think if the current admin is serious about anti-corruption, a very important step is don't endorse any of these politicians na paulit-ulit yung pangalan nila sa mga corruption scandals, and then let the chips fall where they will in 2028 and face the music of the will of the people.
Pero sabi ng rally sa Luneta, mga grupo doon, ay why wait till 2028? Pwede na tayo mag-special elections ngayon. There is a way to make this transition council that they're proposing within legal bounds. Mag-issue daw ng executive order, let the Senate President take over, tapos mabubuo siya ng transition council made of people from different sectors. Tapos magkakaroon ng halalan. Tapos magpapasa ng swiftly ng anti-political dynasty bill. Was there ever an attempt for your group to unite with them? Meron bang pag-uusap para isa na lang yung panawagan dito sa mga rallying ito?
So I think yung point sa Transition Council, I think there's a lot to unpack there. Kasi there's bits of that na pasok pa rin sa Constitution. No? So kung sakaling mag-resign yung presidente tsaka yung vice-presidente na hopefully walang papel yung military dyan, since that also would be outside the Constitution, the civilian authority should be above. No? But if the president or vice-president were both to resign, tama naman. The Senate President takes over, and then he is, currently it's he, no? He is mandated to pass a law setting a special election. No? I forget the number of days required, but he is mandated to pass such a law. Pero hindi ko alam kung saan papasok dyan yung Transition Council within the bounds of the Constitution. Kasi yung Transition Council, sino-sino yan? Ano yung mandato nila? And again, I think it would be wrong to put any unelected body in power, whether that's a junta, Transition Council, whatever have you, without passing through the ballot. No? So I think in terms of yung mga anti-dynasty, we're fighting for that. Strangely enough, while I still wouldn't say there's like more than a 50% chance that it'll get passed. We have seen some progress on the anti-dynasty front. No? Si Speaker Boji, whether it's a credible thing or not, binanggit niya na priority niya yung anti-dynasty. So we will pressure him on that. And let's push the means within the Constitution first. Kasi at least kami sa Trillion Peso March, yung commitment natin sa 87 Constitution is ironclad. And that's the basis of any kind of cooperation with any other group.
And because some are criticizing the Trillion Peso organizers for refusing to demand President Marcos's resignation. In fact, they also accuse your side of being protectors of BBM. What do you say to that, no? Na dito na lang pumapanig kasi ayaw maupo lamang si VP Sara. What are your thoughts on those comments?
So my view is we are loyal to the Constitution, no? And the constitutional system, which we all participated in 2022, produced a president and a vice president. No? We're not satisfied with that president, and I believe that President Marcos has made the best argument that anyone has in the last few years of why Marcos should never be president, no? By his actions, by allowing all of this corruption to happen, and I think he will face the consequences of his. Whether it's just negligence or complicity, he will face the consequences of that in 2028, which is the democratic system. No? Pag nagkakaroon ng corruption, definitely cases should be filed, but there's also political accountability, and that happens during elections. He faced a bit of that in 2025, kaya talagang talong-talo yung alliances state. He'll face that again in 2028. And then as for Vice President Sara Duterte, again, I think it's fairly clear that I don't believe that she should be president. I think that she's done things that are clearly impeachable between corruption and sort of violent tendencies. But if President Marcos were to resign or were to be impeached, she's the successor, no? And so we need to decide, is that an acceptable condition either? And then for those who say, okay, neither, then Senate President takes over, baka pwede pa rin yun kung kusang magre-resign yung dalawa. But if what happens is there's a transition council inserted in between, saan yung mandato nun? Because as much as I don't like President Marcos and as much as I don't like VP Sara, they did receive the mandate of the people in 2022. And that's something that, with humility, I have to recognize that it's the constitutional order that they follow to occupy that position.
But taking a look at the magnitude of corruption, you already said, no, VP Sara is impeachable. But what do you think about the president? I mean, he has, according to command responsibility, right? He has allowed all of this to happen. Kung dati pa lang alam na niya na meron ganung nangyayari, napagalitan niya na si House Speaker at si Congressman Zaldico, according to Congressman Toby Chanco, bakit hindi niya pinigilan? And this is all happening under his administration.
Well, I think in terms of command responsibility, I'd have to review kung that directly is impeachable. But definitely, I think if more evidence materializes that substantiates yung comments ni Zaldico, which is why I think on the one hand, si Zaldico should come home, tama naman yung sinasabi. But on the other hand, I think the Marcos administration, one, needs to make sure he comes home safely so he can give his testimony and then there can be a bit more credibility to it. And two, they need to recuse themselves from the investigations. Tama na yung, the ICI, while it was something we called for, I think it's increasingly untenable that it serves at the pleasure of the president. So he should, if he's serious about anti-corruption and clearing his name, certify as urgent the bill that creates an independent ICI. So he has no more role in the investigation and the ICI can go where the evidence takes them. So I think in that sense, if it's from there, evidence emerges that is clearly impeachable, then I think that definitely will have to be pursued if we want to stay within the bounds of the Constitution. But as of now, the call is again for the president to recuse himself from the investigations by certifying the ICI bill as urgent.
All right, invite everyone to your protest this coming November 30.
And po, so again, November 30, there are protests all over the country. Sa Metro Manila, nabanggit na yung Luneta. We're organizing the group sa People Power Monument. And then all over the country, Cebu, Palawan, places in Mindanao, talagang may iba't ibang mga versions ng Trillion Peso March na magaganap doon. So wherever you are, please join, please make your voices heard laban sa corruption. And if you're here in Metro Manila or kung punta kayo dito sa Maynila, yung Trillion Peso March po, magsisimula yan mga 8:30, 8:45 sa EDSA People Power Monument. See you there po November 30 for part 2 of the Trillion Peso March.
We pray for a peaceful protest this coming Sunday. Maraming salamat for joining us and telling us all about the stand that you're making. We have Tindig Pilipinas co-convenor Kiko Aquino-Dee.
Thank you very much po. Thank you very much to everyone who watched today.